So now I'd like to introduce Paul Browning. Paul is Dr. Paul Browning. He did his PhD here at QUT, like the best of us do. And, he's the headmaster of St. Paul's School. And he has written a book called Compelling Leadership, The Importance of Trust and How to Get It. And really, I think, follows on from John's work in Teachers' Work. Thank you.
Well, good morning, everyone. Very dull response. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Excellent. Thank you very much. As Linda said, I'd like to talk to you this morning about something that I believe is incredibly important for schools. And it goes to really, I think, the heart of what John's been talking about too. It's about school culture, how to improve school culture and create a school that is an active school, a socially just school that cares about the students and the staff. Now, I'm not sure who I'm talking to this morning, but I'm talking about leadership and the development of trust. And it's the principal or the head of the school who actually is responsible for developing that school culture. But I'd go further than that and say it's actually the responsibility of all the leadership within the school to act in a way that develops a positive school culture, and my research says built on trust or relationships of trust. Now, can I get a show of hands? Are people here in the room in positions of leadership, or are you aspiring leaders? Show of hands. Excellent, thank you. 3 main points I'm going to make today. The first point is, what is trust? The second point is, what is the importance of trust? And the third point is, how to actually get trust in the way that you actually behave as a leader. Trust is a really interesting thing. Now, if I was to ask you to spend a few moments just talking to the person next to you, defining what the word trust actually is, I think you would all come up with quite different definitions. Trust is actually a socially constructed phenomenon. It means different things for different people. It means different things because we all have different lives and different life experiences. And those experiences form what we understand relationships or trust to look like. It's a socially constructed phenomenon. Now, for me, trust is about putting my full confidence in somebody else, understanding that they genuinely care for me and are interested in who I am. Now, has anyone been bungee jumping? Yes, a couple of people are here. Very brave people. I've never been bungee jumping. It probably says something about my willingness to trust the operator on the deck there as he ties that elastic around my leg, hoping that he's got the right length that when I jump off, I'm not going to hit my head on the bottom. But I have been parachuting. Has anyone been parachuting? A couple of people. I wonder if you've done that sort of namby-pamby parachuting, that tandem jump. I went parachuting, but I did the static line jump, where I jumped out myself. Really interesting experience. It was at a place called Wilton, which is south of Sydney. And I went down there with a couple of mates of mine after we finished school. Done it once, I'm never going to do it again. And we spent the whole day training. Had to sign waivers if we die accidentally, that it's not their fault, it's actually our fault. Who cares if I'm dead? But anyway, I'll sign that and away we go. We trained, we had a reserve chute on the front. When we jumped out of the plane, we were supposed to count to 4, 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, check parachute. And if it hasn't opened, we're meant to pull the reserve chute, and there you go, Bob's your uncle. Now, it came to actually going to do the jump late in the afternoon, got into the plane, rickety, horrible old plane, no door, no seats, sitting on the floor, knees up against our chin, absolutely petrified. The noise was incredible. Comes to your turn to jump, and the instructor tells the pilot to throttle off, to slow the plane down. The reason he does that is that so when you jump, the parachute opens properly. Came to my turn, shuffled to the door, legs hanging out the door. I was so petrified I just jumped. The instructor hadn't even told the pilot to throttle off. He turned around. Where did he go? 1,000, 2,000, forgot to count, couldn't be bothered, too scared. The video showed me jumping, and 10 seconds later, the parachute opened. I should have opened my reserve chute, but I'm still here today, so that's okay. Now, the importance of trust. It's been shown that trust actually improves cooperation. It improves the way that teachers work together and collaborate and plan. It improves greatly the culture of a school and how teachers interact with students and parents. It creates a really open, great, positive culture. But most fascinatingly, trust improves student outcomes. Now, this study was done by Brick and Schneider in the United States. They were studying the Chicago Reform Act, which was introduced in 1988, and they were engaged to see what sort of impact that Reform Act was actually having on young people's outcomes. And they discovered that it was actually not the Reform Act, but they discovered that schools with high levels of trust improve student outcomes far better than schools with low levels of trust. In fact, schools with high levels of trust had a 1 in 3 chance of improving student outcomes far more than the norm, where schools with low levels of trust only a 1 in 7 chance of improving student outcomes beyond the norm. Trust has a significant impact on student learning. Now, my study, I was really interested. I've been a principal now for 17 years, and I moved to a school in Queensland here. I came from the ACT, disappointing result in the State of Origin last night, but nonetheless, I was really interested to see what I could do as a leader to change culture. How could I actually impact the culture of the school I was working at? I came from a school where I was the founding head, so I had the great opportunity and privilege to actually define culture. And I wanted to know what behaviours I was using that would change and positively influence the culture of the school I was working at. So I did a multi-case study, and I found 4 highly trusted transformational school leaders to study in depth and do a cross-case analysis. Now, it's actually not a question of whether you are trusted or not. It's actually a question of how much you are trusted. 19 schools from across Australia returned statistically reliable data, and I was interested in those 4 heads. They were really highly trusted school leaders, and they were leaders of large schools, because trust is a very relational thing. We can develop trusting relationships as we get to know each other really well, but I was interested in the leadership practices, not in the ability of people to develop relationships. Interestingly, 2 of these leaders were female, 2 were male, 2 were introverted, 2 were extroverted. 1 had been at the school for 1 year. Others had been at the school for 15 years. It showed me what I was looking for was those leadership practices. Now, studies have also shown that organisational culture is dramatically affected by trust. And my research showed that there was almost a direct correlation between trust in the leader and trust in the organisation. And graphically, this is what it looked like. Those 4 leaders, 4 schools are on the far right-hand side. I went into each of those schools and I spent some time there and I listened to stories that teachers told me about their leader. I asked them the question, why is it that you trust your principal, your head? Don't tell me stories about their honest or their integrity. I want to know what they do. Why do you trust them? After studying those 4 schools and shadowing the head, talking to the staff, doing a whole school staff survey, seeing what they're actually talking about, I did a cross-case analysis across all 4 heads and found 10 practices or leadership qualities or behaviours that were common amongst all 4. These can be developed by anybody passionate about leadership, aspiring to be a leader, or in a position of leadership. Growing your leadership capacity will improve students' outcomes. These are the 10, and I'll talk to you very quickly about each of them. The first was admit your mistakes. Great leaders who are well trusted are willing to be vulnerable and say, I'm sorry. I got it wrong. I made a mistake. But more importantly, they were actually able then to say, I'll fix it. They were humble enough to actually acknowledge when they made something, did something wrong, and then they were willing to actually repair and restore that mistake. Highly trusted leaders offer trust. Who likes to be micromanaged? No one. We're all professionals. Highly trusted leaders allow people to do their job. They offer them trust. But interestingly, the staff, they said, my boss trusts me to do my job, but I know that if I'm in trouble or I need help, they're there to assist me. Highly trusted leaders actively listen. Now, this is one I have real trouble with because my mind is going at 1,000,000 miles an hour. I probably was ADHD when I was a child, but never diagnosed because it wasn't actually something around at that time. But my mind as a leader is thinking about 1,000,000 things. And when I'm listening to someone, I really struggle to actually pay attention to what they're actually genuinely saying. One staff member once grabbed me by the cheeks and said, Paul, I can see your eyes are glazing over. Would you please focus and listen to what I'm saying here? Highly trusted leaders really listen to hear what the person actually isn't saying. They're listening for the emotions, and they're able to repeat back to that person, this is what you're telling me, isn't it? Highly trusted leaders provide affirmation. They spend time looking for things that they can acknowledge their staff for. So they go into the staff rooms and thank them publicly, or they'll send them an email or leave them a note for the big things, but also for the small things. They spent time seeking out things that they could thank each staff member for. They provide affirmation. They make consultative decisions. So when things are going to impact, or a decision is going to impact on the work of the teachers, they consult with their staff, get their views. And the interesting thing was that teachers said to me, it's not a yes answer we're looking for, it's the fact that we feel valued and our opinion is heard. And that once a decision is made, the principal explains to us why that decision was made, helps us to understand that. Highly trusted leaders are visible. They can be seen around the school, going to assemblies, going to chapel services, attending performances, in the grounds, talking to students, talking to parents, reinforcing expectations. They're there amongst it as well. They're consistent. Now, you can be consistently inconsistent, but these people were level-headed, calm, and whenever a teacher had an issue, they knew that their principal or their leader would respond to them in a calm, settled manner, and no problem was too big or too difficult. They spend time coaching and mentoring staff. One of the most important things for me as a leader, as I've come to realise after a long time, is to grow other people and their capacity to lead. Investing in them builds trust. They genuinely care for their staff. And I was really intrigued by this because these were big staff, but these leaders were genuinely caring for individual people. And the stories of that care were shared. And the last one is probably the most obvious one, where we keep confidences. And probably if I asked you to define trust at the beginning, confidence would have been something you actually said, or confidentiality. Now, I've taken that research a little bit a step further, and I developed a trust and transformational leadership assessment rubric. And that rubric can be used to get feedback about your current leadership practice. And it's been shown to be very reliable in measuring the level of trust in the organisation, the level of trust that staff have in you. And then it can be used to develop a professional learning plan to help you grow your leadership capacity. Now, There is my ebook is free and you can download that, and you have a flyer there for that, and you can download that from this site. But there is a small cost if you're wanting to use that Trust and Transformational Leadership Assessment rubric. And all the money raised from that actually goes to support 3 schools on the island of Vanuatu, remote schools who are really disadvantaged in comparison to obviously Australia. And this is a kindergarten room in one of those schools. So if people are wanting to use that assessment rubric, you can be assured that your money and support is going to these people and their education. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your attention. I hope you've enjoyed that.